Hello my lovelies. Today I'm continuing with question 2 because why not? Just forever on this question. So this is question 2 of AQA's paper 1 and it's what's commonly known as the language question. So the question, as we've talked about before, and you can look at that in other videos, asks you basically to look at the effects of the language. So we have a question here which I've written based on a passage from Laurie Lee. Not the kind of passage you would get in the exam, as I've said before, because it's autobiography, not fiction. So it says, look in detail at this extract from lines 6 to 15 of the source. How does the writer use language here to describe Laurie Lee's first experience of the garden? You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, sentence forms. So, just a little reminder, it could not should, you don't have to write 3 paragraphs, you don't have to write about words, phrases, language features, techniques, sentence forms. Basically it's a free license to write about whatever it is that you like that's about language. And so that's what we're looking at today. Now, it's been my theory that there's different approaches to reading that different kind of students use at different levels. Partly because all my life I've been a B-grade student, and as I've got older, obviously, I've got better at English. But when I was 15, 16, it was hard, and I worked really hard for my grades, and I did get good grades in the end. But I didn't read in the same way that the brighter girls in the class read, who had this ability, this amazing ability to pinpoint exactly what it was in the text that was important. So for instance, in my version of Pride and Prejudice, which I've still got because I'm such a hoarder, from GCSE, I've practically underlined the whole book. The whole book is beautifully colour-coded, and every single thing on Elizabeth is underlined, and everything on Mr. Darcy is underlined. And my best friend, who was really super talented at English, she just had about 5 things underlined. So that's part of what I'm going to look at today. And I'm going to kind of show you how that works with the passage. So I picked it deliberately because it's just got so many language features in it, and you're going to find that the chief examiner is going to pick a similar passage for you that's just absolutely loaded. Now, if you remember from the last video, I'm absolutely not going to use a feature spotting approach. So I can see already comparisons in the first few lines. I'm not going to look for those things. It's going to damage my approach if I do so. So what would I do? I'm going to show you how I, as a 15-year-old, would underline. Because you've got to underline. Teachers say to you, year 11, you must underline all of the quotes that you're going to use from question 2, and so you diligently do. So I'm going to do that for you. Okay, the June grass. So I'm looking at the what's my question? How Laurie Lee described his first experience of the garden. Okay, so that's not very important in the June grass, amongst which I stood. Okay, I'm noticing he puts us in the centre of it. We've got something interesting there. It's taller than he was, so he's perhaps feeling overwhelmed. Okay, and I wept. That's his emotional reaction to the garden. I'd never been so close to grass before. Okay, so close maybe I would underline that. It's going to get worse. It towered above me. Look at that word towered. I can't not have that. And all around me is surrounded by it. Each blade tattooed with tiger skins of sunlight. Oh, I can't not underline all of that. Do you see what's happening? It was knife-edged, dark, a wicked green, thick as a forest, alive with grasshoppers that chirped and chattered and leapt through the air like monkeys. I don't know what that overwhelming jungle bit's doing there. That's not part of the original text. Wow! I've already underlined the majority of the first paragraph. I was lost and I didn't know where to move. Okay, so that's his emotional reaction. A tropic heat oozed up from the ground. I can't not underline all of that. Rank with sharp odours of roots and nettles, all that. Snow clouds of elder blossom banked in the sky, showering upon me the fumes and flakes of their sweet and giddy suffocation. Well, I would want to underline all of that. High overhead ran frenzied larks, screaming as though the sky were tearing apart. Okay, so this would be my version of my underlined text for question 2. And you can see why I would happily spend 2 hours writing about this, because I could easily spend 2 hours writing about all the images in here. Right, 8 marks, 10 minutes. I have absolutely no idea as a B grade student how I'm going to prioritise anything in there. Sort of middle grades, I'm kind of looking at it going, it's all important to me. And it is. How do I prioritise? So we've got this thing I think that middle grade students do, which is have this inability to have the confidence in their own skill in picking out the one thing that's important to them. So, which is what I did. It was all important. I didn't want to prioritise, because if I prioritised something, other bits were important and I thought I was leaving them out. So that's why I underlined like that, because that's what people do. And when I'm marking GCSE, that's what we see. It's like we get the question 2s and everything's underlined on it, because it's all important. So what happens then is one of 2 things. Firstly, people generally take an approach from the top. So people then say, okay, I'm going to comment on the first things, and what they do is they get to there. And then they run out of space and time, and they realise they've got question 3, 4 and 5 to answer, and so they know they've got to move on. And they never get into the images down here. So that's one approach, that you limit, but you just edit from the bottom up, and you just don't bother looking at the things that are at the bottom, which is sad because there's some really nice bits in there. The other approach is that you just then try and write about everything, and what you do is just end up describing what's in the text, and that's not helpful either. Or there's a third way, which you just couldn't do in the exam, which is just to write about it all, which is the approach I generally take with poetry, because that's how I am. Still not quite got the confidence to say, do that one, do that one, do that one, and that's it, which brighter students have got. So when I call this approach my broad brushstrokes, I just underline every single thing that's to do with the topic, and I'm just filling in the broad brushstrokes on my canvas that's going to be my essay. So this is my broad brushstrokes, and what I do then is I put in the precision. So when I've got this, I then have to start prioritising things, and I'm going to look back at the question to help me focus that. And all I'm going to do is just rank order the quotes and think about, okay, which is important. So how does the writer use language here to describe Laurie Lee's first experience of the garden? So I have to think, what is his first experience of the garden? Well, I think he's terrified, and it sounds like a jungle. That was that comment that I'd got rid of. So I'm just going to highlight, and you'll notice that I will change my highlighting as I go. I'm just going to highlight for the moment the things that make it sound like a jungle. So I've got tiger skins of sunlight. That's to do with it being a jungle. Thick as a forest, that simile is kind of a bit obvious. Alive with grasshoppers that chirped and chattered and let through the air like monkeys. Now that simile, I could underline all of that. Sorry, if I were highlighting, I think I would highlight all of that at first, and then I have to think. The bit that I really want, oh look, it's beautiful. It's a simile too. So I'm starting to get the ideas that come out. We've got tigers and monkeys, which are the things that are going to make it sound like a jungle. So that's going to be my first paragraph. And you can see now I've got myself down to the 3 quotes that I'm going to use. There are other things in here that what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour code them differently, and I'm going to think, okay, I might want to comment about these because I've got things to do with danger. The blade, the knife-edged, the wicked. So I could start to say he's terrified and he feels threatened by it. I'm starting to get the feelings out there as well. So I've gone for my broad brushstrokes of underlining virtually everything in that paragraph, to then thinking, right, those are my 3 for that. This is another idea that I can take up from there. So I have got enough there to write 2 paragraphs, 2 sensible paragraphs for an 8-mark question in 10 minutes. I think that would give me plenty to write about, more than plenty. But then I know I've ignored this bit, and there are some lovely bits in here. Now, I don't know that as a 15-year-old I'd know what Elder Blossom was. Some of you are going to head towards that quote because you don't know what it is. and you're going to try and talk about that, and try and talk about things that you don't know what they are, I'm not sure that's the most sensible approach. So for me, now I know as an adult, and you may know this, if you're a botanist or you smell a blossom, it's really, really powerful smell. It's probably the most powerful smell in the garden, and it's like, wow, that stuff hits you in the face. So I think it's important that it's elder blossom, because of later he says the fumes and the sweet and giddy suffocation, because it is strong enough to make you feel, I guess, that you're surrounded by it and you can't escape from it. It kind of gets in your nostrils and hangs there. So I might like that. The snow clouds, though, it doesn't go with anything else. I like that, snow clouds, and it gives you the idea that they're elder blossom, which they are, white, and they look cloud shaped, which is interesting too. But I'm not getting any. I'm just going to describe to you what's in there. I like the word oozed. And again, I think it maybe could, I don't know, is oozed dangerous? I don't want to go there. I don't think oozed is necessarily dangerous. But it's, I don't know. I'm not going to go with that one, because I think I would struggle to explain it. But what I do like is going with this idea of threat here, which is these birds, the larks. And first we've got they're frenzied. I'm not sure I want to talk about that, because frenzied is not the same as dangerous. But the screaming as though the sky were tearing apart, I want to talk about that, and I think it goes with that sense of danger that really the young Laurie Lee feels like his world is falling apart. And to me, it reminds me a bit, and I'll explain why I think this, of bombers and fighter planes in a war. Firstly, because you've got the connection with the larks and the flying, which is obvious. We've got also this banked. Banked is a word that we often use with planes when they're turning. So we've got already an idea established about planes, and also they seem to be firing things down from the sky. And then high overhead ran the frenzied larks screaming as though the sky were tearing apart. I think it's that word, screaming. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that fighter planes and bombers do scream, but certainly you get that impression of them in the movies. You can imagine it being really noisy as well. So I think I've got enough detail there to make a really good answer. And how I did it is this. I went from my middle grade underline everything approach to my top grade pinpointing. And I've had to sacrifice lots of things along the way and make decisions about whether I can talk about it. And how I made that sacrifice is by using this approach of narrowing in, but also thinking about what sits together as a group. So I'm thinking of groupings here, rather than standalone language words on their own, like oozed, which kind of goes with the tropic heat but doesn't go very much with much else there. I guess with suffocation, there are things there that I could make work, and you will see that you can make work. But what I've done is I've just thought about broad brush strokes, and then when I've got my broad brush strokes, it's practically underlining everything. I don't know why I bothered doing it. Is then to think about what can I then pick out in groups. So I went back to the question, and I thought about, okay, so how does the boy feel in the garden, that it's dangerous and that it's like a jungle? And then I thought, okay, well, what are the things that make it seem like a jungle, which helped me go with the tiger skins, the forest, the light monkeys. And then as I was reading that, I picked up on that little group there, the blades, the knife edge, the wicked green, which goes with this idea of danger and weaponry almost. The young Laurie Lee really does feel like he's under attack from nature. So that's the approach that I'm using. Broad brush strokes first, then going back to the question and looking at the question and thinking, what quotes fit with this question? What's my simple answer to this question? And then thinking about groups. And when I do that, broad brush strokes down to groups, then I can allow myself to get rid of all of the material that's not going to help me in my essay. So next week I'll show you how to put those into a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 answer, and we'll take it from there. But hopefully that'll help you see the approach that I use all the way through in terms of quote selection. Alright, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.